reprise du débat. I will therefore invite the member for Cowichan Malahat Langford to give his right of reply for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm humbled to stand here and represent the great people of Cowichan Malahat Langford on Vancouver Island, and I continue to listen to and bring their voices forward here to Ottawa as their Member of Parliament. One of the biggest issues I hear about is the impact of crime in our community from people who are just trying to focus on the high cost of living and raising their families in a safe community. People regularly talk to me about justice for victims as well as compassion and support for those impacted by crime. One way I am able to address this is through my private member's bill, C-235, an act respecting families of murdered and brutalized persons. This is an act that focuses on justice for victims and compassion for families of victims of the most heinous of crimes where a victim is abducted, sexually assaulted, and murdered in the same incident. Very similar to that of Kimberly Proctor from Langford on Vancouver Island, a community I represent. Kimberly was horrifyingly abducted, raped, and murdered in 2010, and I give my deepest respect to her family who I know are watching today. I'd like to express also my sincere appreciation to all of my colleagues who sponsored and spoken to my private member's bill, including the member from Brantford, Brant South Six Nations, and my colleague from Selkirk, Interlake Eastman, also for initiating this private member's bill over 10 years ago. I think the most important factor that I'd like to focus on today, and that I would like all members of this House to consider, this bill is about both justice for victims and compassion for their families and loved ones.
Absolutely.
And by giving judges the option of parole in eligibility of up to 40 years, this bill is, as we've heard, charter compliant and will now spare the families and loved ones of victims from re-traumatization of unnecessary parole hearings potentially every 2 years.
Indeed.
I have personally sat with families as they recount the horrific process that comes with victim impact statements and the lengthy parole hearing process. The notifications, the lead up to the hearings itself is devastating. Disturbingly, it is well documented that these criminals get off on recounting the heinous detail of their crimes solely for the purpose of re-victimizing families. Parole hearings that are sometimes in as little as 15 years after sentencing based on time served and early parole factors. Presently, in these cases, only the murder portion goes to sentencing, knowing that the other crimes will not affect the current maximum parole ineligibility of 25 years, leaving the victim, family, and loved ones without justice for the abduction and sexual assault portions of these horrendous crimes. Another important part worth noting is that criminals in these most heinous crimes will likely never receive parole. I was unable to find any such cases. Criminals who we know have no chance of ever being rehabilitated. And that doesn't stop the families, of course, from feeling obligated to submit victim impact statements, attend parole hearings, as it's the only way they can give a voice to those who can no longer speak, those their family members. Victims silenced forever who can no longer speak for themselves. Through debate, we've heard some minor suggestions for improvements discussed, including a more robust appeal mechanism, something we could examine in committee and indeed work with Legislative Council to potentially draft an amendment. Another suggestion was to ensure that the bill would not be retroactive. However, I can confirm that new sentencing legislation is never retroactive. We also heard suggestions to ensure that judges provide clear and exceptional grounds to accompany such sentences. Once again, I'm willing to re-examine and strengthen any judicial requirements to justify sentences. So I'd like to conclude our second reading of this bill with a few points. Firstly, I would like to remind all members of this House that this bill, previously passed through to committee, received broad cross-party support and was set to return to the House before Parliament was prorogued in 2021. Secondly, I'm open in committee to exploring and making necessary amendments, if required, that strengthen the bill, some that I have addressed here today. And lastly, I think the most important part, I'm asking all members to support my bill on behalf of families who I've heard from about the stresses, pressures, and devastating impact of ongoing parole hearings and being re-victimized by these most heinous criminals. Therefore, I challenge members from across the House to join me and give broad support to Bill C-235 by voting yes tomorrow and send it before Justice Committee. More importantly, I challenge them to show Canadians that we have listened. This bill is about justice for victims. It is about sparing loved ones from the parole hearing process that forced them to relive the worst moment of their lives over and over. By supporting this bill, we can show Canadians we are prepared to stand with victims' families and loved ones while respecting the memory of those they have lost. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The question is as follows. Mr. Kibble, seconded by Mr. Cooper, move that Bill C-235, an act to amend Criminal Code increasing parole ineligibility, be now read a second time and referred to the Standing Committee on Justice and Human Rights. If a member participating in person wishes the motion be carried or carried on division, or if a member of a recognized party participating in person wishes to request a recorded division, I would invite them to rise and indicate it to the chair. The honourable member for Cowichan, Malahat, Langford.
Mr. Speaker, I request that we pass this bill on division.
Is it agreed? Agreed. I therefore declare the motion carried on division.
Second reading of this bill. Deuxième lecture de ce projet de loi.
Accordingly, this bill stands referred to the Standing Committee on Justice and